Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. I'm joined here by my sidekick, Mike, baseball collector, another number cruncher, and we're going to be taking a look at the Vintage 100 Index, the hobby report. How you doing, Mike?
I'm well. I'm glad to be your sidekick on this little adventure.
Yeah, it's been fun so far. We've done one, I guess, official index report on the Bench Clear Media channel. That's sort of our kickoff, and now it's going to be hosted on my channel here. And glad to have you participate. Your help and assistance throughout this whole thing. So it's been fun so far. So before we get into all the number crunching, I do want to point out that I am calling it the Vintage 100 Index Hobby Report. Again, not to get into the whole thing, the background, we did that on our sort of like intro video. But this is not meant to be an investment type market. I never grew up talking about baseball cards as a market. It's been a hobby. So I don't know. It's a hobby report. We're doing this for fun. We're just seeing what the numbers show us, and we're going from there. So
I have a question for you, John.
Yes.
Did you read, like, we got a lot of comments on the Golden Age of Cardboard episode where we talked through the first numbers.
Yep.
Did you read a lot of those comments? There was a lot of criticism of the methodology being used for this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any answers for any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, some of them made good points. And we understand nothing's going to be perfect. This is not, we picked 100 cards and we decided to go with the collector grade. Some people said, well, the prices of some of those cards are unrealistic to normal collectors. Again, we're not trying to do something here where we say, hey, you should go out and buy a 1948 Bowman Stain Musial in a 4, when I know I can't afford a 4. Right. I may only be able to afford a 1 or a 2. This isn't a list of cards you should go out and buy in a particular grade. So we tried to come up with something consistent, something that had a sense of, well, like I said, consistency that we could look at. We picked 100 cards. We picked rookie cards. We could have had any number of 100 cards. We could have had 500 cards. It's all about the data, the time that we have to put this data together. There was one good suggestion, and we've actually incorporated that once we get into the numbers here. One very good suggestion about how we could break down the data and see what that shows. Another one, I think one of them said, well, why just focusing on baseball? We're mainly baseball collectors, so that's what we know.
Heck, look at my name.
What?
Look at my name on my channel.
Baseball collector. So I think, I don't think there are any really bad or negative or mean comments. There were, again, good suggestions, and there are just some limitations in what we can do, the time that we have.
One guy suggested, sorry to interrupt. One guy suggested, well, it's no good if you just use the last sale of the month. If you're not averaging out the prices for everyone sold in the month, then it's really no good. And okay, sure, more data is always better. I would say that's a true statement. And yet some of these cards trade dozens of times in a month in the particular grade that we're looking at. Some of them not at all. They don't move at all. And so to use, again, I like the analogy of the stock market. A stock trades throughout the day, and you don't look at, well, where did it close at? You don't average the price from all of the trades throughout the day. You just go, where did it close? And so we're looking at the close of the month. Be it what it may. Sometimes that sale happens on the 15th, that last sale of the month. Sometimes it's the 20th. Sometimes it's the 30th or 31st, which is convenient. But the reality is there's so much data. I mean, again, if somebody wants to do that, knock yourself out. But
yeah, I know. I mean,
it ain't going to be us.
I know you started updating the prices for July here, which technically would be the end of June prices, but we're doing the July report. And I know you started taking some time to get through. I think you got maybe through a third, a half, something like that. And I did the rest and updating all the charts and all this stuff. I mean, there's some time involved, and we have other things that we do. This is a fun project for us, but yeah, like you said, if we had hours upon hours, yeah, we could put in thousands of data points. Another one comment that I think someone made was, well, with these vintage cards, sometimes it comes down to eye appeal, and you can get fluctuations in prices. Again, going back to that 48 Bowman Stain Musial, 1 4 could look different than another 4, and one of them may have a better eye appeal and sells for more. There's nothing we can do about that.
If that happens to be the last sale of the month, then it's going to get counted. If it's the first sale of the month and 3 more sell, it won't be counted. And there is no way to account for that.
Nope.
Not without, again, gathering every piece of data. And sorry.
And even, I've noticed that when I started first looking up prices, I went to PSA's website, found out that their database of auction prices don't seem to be updated quite regularly for certain cards. They're supposed to be pulling stuff from eBay. When then I go to eBay sales, okay, well, that would be good for eBay, but vintage card prices is what we're using. And so they pull supposedly from other auction sites as well as eBay. But who knows, their data may not be 100% perfect. So
I guarantee you it's not. I've seen sales that happen on eBay that aren't reported on VC. It's not perfect.
Yep. And it also, and no one pointed this out, but I just thought of it. It only tracks cards sold online or through auction houses. What about all the deals at card shows? There's no way to track that. So, I mean, we're not intending this to be a perfect gauge on and I almost said market, the vintage hobby of cards. It's imperfect, but at least it's some data that we can take a look at and say, hey, does this make sense? Do you see that out there? Well, this is interesting, and what may cause this or that?
Yeah, it's a trend indicator, not a perfect, analysis of the entire vintage card hobby, baseball card hobby. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
But all that being said, I love what we're doing, and we got a lot of great positive comments.
Oh yeah, so, I mean, I last time I checked, I think that video on Bench Clear got over like 5,500 views so far.
Yeah,
I mean, it's done very well. So a lot of people were interested. Hopefully, they'll continue to watch these episodes. And again, we welcome comments and suggestions. Like I said, you'll see once we get into some of the data here. Someone suggested that we do something, and I think it shows some interesting information.
Yeah. And again, it's everybody's, it's if somebody wants to volunteer to do the data gathering.
Yeah. Well, yeah, someone made a comment of, well, I thought I was going to, take up Mike's suggestion and do it, but John, thank you for stepping in and doing it yourself. So I'm like, hey, that's fine. But just like the whole Hall of Fame, voting and all that stuff, hey, if someone wanted to disagreed with your methodology or now Jake's, they're welcome to start their own or do it. And
yeah,
we're just here to have fun and enjoy the hobby, and we love crunching numbers, so we thought this would be a fun exercise.
So let's look at the data this is data ending June 30th.
Yes.
You want me to pull it up, John?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so here we go.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the index, and again, the index, we have 100 cards in the index, and we track the last sale price up until June 30th in this case. And then we divide it by 100. So it's really the average price of a card in the index. And so for July, the index was 1,248 and change. And since last month, that's down like 1.3%. Since the beginning of the year, about 1.75%. So not a huge
pretty
drop.
Flat. Yeah.
I mean, it is essentially flat. Since we started the data, and someone said, well, to have a true estimate, you need to go back further than 2019. Well, sure, when we have time, maybe we'll go back to 2018, 17, 16. But for now, that was just an endeavor in and itself. I think it was over 4,000 or 5,000 entries that we did just to go back to January 2019. So that's the oldest data we have for this. But if you bought those cards in the index in January 2019, they are still up 150%. So even with the big COVID bubble, if you want to call it, those cards are up like 150%. The lowest the index got, which hasn't changed from last month, was still April 2019. So we haven't hit the old bottom, but we are way off, 28% from the high of April 2021, when the index was at 1738.
Love it. It just shows us things have calmed down to me.
Yeah. And this is a small sliver of the hobby. It's even a small sliver of the vintage cards. So you may get examples of, this one card I have, Jesus, it's down 50%. Well, okay, there are others, and we'll see here, that have gone up.
Mm-hmm.
So, all these people are saying, and I even did a video, hey, is it bad if vintage card prices crash? These numbers aren't necessarily indicating, we'll see in a couple slides ahead maybe, that there are some corrections. I'm not seeing a crash, but
in the overall
at least
market
for these 100 cards.
Right. Just for these 100 cards in these 100 grades.
Yep.
And so next slide, let's keep moving here.
Yep.
All right. So here's the graph of the index. And I think it's fascinating to see stable, slight uptick during COVID in 2020.
Yep.
2021, we saw the giant spike, and then kind of back into another new normal, I guess.
Right? It's just a higher baseline, if you want to think of it that way. For about 2 years, you had, as vintage cards go, they're, to equate to the stock market, they're like granny stocks. They're not these high flyers that, have these double-digit annual returns. They're the 3Ms of the world. They're, Hershey, whatever, that just slowly over time increase in value, which is what you see for 2019 through even maybe the beginning of 2021. Then you see the craziness happen. But again, if you go back maybe 10 months, it's not a whole lot of change.
Right.
Now, the last 4 months, there is a downward trend, but not significant.
No, in fact, it's basically back where it was at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
November, you can just basically, we've created a new level right here, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's what the index data looks like.
And to me, this tells me that the demand's still there.
Right.
The demand, but maybe a more discerning demand, not a crazy, overly optimistic demand, which you saw in the early part of 2021. For prices to level off at a new norm, a higher new norm, so to speak, that shows that demand's still there. If demand just fell off the face of the earth, you would see a much more steep decline.
Yeah, definitely still people buying cards. And I think a lot of people in the vintage community have just accepted a new normal of higher than it was by 25, 30%. But that's not all cards, right? So let's
so the next chart here, before you get to it, Mike, someone suggested that, well, it would be interesting to see what the index is per decade. So again, we have a group of cards from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and one card from the 1980s, which would be 1980 Rickey Henderson. So I took a look and did a separate index for each of the decades. And some of these decades, it's interesting to look. So if you go to the next one here, Mike.
Trying.
And I appreciate Mike helping out here with the graphs and stuff. I was having some technical issues on my end. So so here are the 1940s. So there are 19 cards in the index from the 1940s. Now, I don't see the spike. I see a little bit of a spike in early 2021. Nothing huge, but where's that new normal? I mean, look at the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, 40s cards have been going up.
I mean, 40. I mean, so okay. So in this index where you see a slight decline or a leveling off, so to speak, 1940s cards are doing quite well.
Right.
At least, again, the ones in our index.
Sure.
So let's go to the 50s. See what that shows us.
I don't know why this isn't.
There we go. Now there are.
There we go. There's the 50s.
There are 28 cards in the index from the 1950s. Now here is where you really see that burst in, the bubble bursting type thing, because we do have the Mantle, we have the Mays, we have the Eddie Matthews, we have the big heavy hitters in the 50s. If the 50s have some key rookie cards and cards that are, comma cards. Okay, a lot of comma cards in the 1950s. And with that, you get changes of a couple $100, or in the case of the 51 Mantle, you have one where that goes down by 10 grand in a month or two. It significantly impacts the index. So this one here of the 50s, it does show that big spike and the drop. But again, I don't, there's still some softening, I think, in 50s as the last few months indicate, but not a crash. Again, and establishing a new norm, finding that new norm for the 50s.
Right.
All right, the 60s, we have 29 cards in the index. And again, you do see that rise in early 2021, but it's almost establishing a new norm. You're not seeing, there's movement, and there's always going to be movement in cards. Okay. But last 3 months, there's been a bit of a decline. But before that, I mean, where we are now in July, if you go back, that's probably a year ago.
November. That's where we were in November.
Well, and if you even go a few months back before that, when it dips back down again.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, that may be August, September, something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, January, February, March, April, May, June,
July. Okay. So about 12 months.
July. So a year.
Yeah.
It's been a year and it's about flat overall.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, it's just interesting to see the different cards. Now again, the 70s, you tend to have cards that, in terms of value per card, they're going to be cheaper than cards from the 60s and cheaper than cards from the 50s. So, the swings, you could have instead of a couple $100 swing in a higher card from the 50s, that equates to maybe a card maybe going up or down $10, $20. Right. All right. So everything's relative once you break it down by decade. So let's, we don't have anything in the 80s because it's just one card. So it didn't make sense to just look at the Ricky Henderson. But the next chart, I combined all of them. So hopefully you can see it on the screen there, but the sort of like the dark blue is the combination of all the 100 cards.
I'll make it bigger.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. So you have the 1950s as the big, the top line chart there. Then you have the 100 index, and then you can see the 40s and the 60s and the 70s way at the bottom. But you can see how the index is impacted significantly by the cards from the 1950s. And again, you would expect that because there are more higher dollar valued cards from the 1950s. The further you go back, usually speaking, the more expensive the card. So,
right.
But again, it's just a different way of looking at the data and saying, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" And maybe trying to figure out what's going on, and maybe there's no obvious explanation, but it's still something that I don't know. I find interesting. I love these things and looking at them and going, boy, that's interesting, and I didn't realize that, and so on. So
I think it's interesting. I love how pretty much each decade, especially when you superimpose them like this, you can really see the same kind of general trend, right? An upswing in early 2021, followed by a retracement of some degree, and a flattening out at a new normal higher than it was before, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Let's go top performers for the month.
All right. Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily go in the interest of time, go all through every single one here, but it's interesting that there's a decent number of 70s cards. You got a mixture of 50s and 60s. I mean, you got something from every decade in the top performers. And again, you have, the 77 Topps Dale Murphy. Went from $46 to essentially $100. But it's 117% increase. I mean, if you own that card, hey, your card more than doubled. All right. And since June. And then we got some. So again, not all cards are crashing or going down. We have some here, even the 50 Bowman Ted Williams was up 20% to just under $1,000. We got the Juan Marshall rookie, Jackie Robinson, very popular card there. Whitey Ford's rookie, Thurman Munson 71 Topps. That was interesting. That's new on the list, I think, for this month. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I want to point out a criticism that we got that this brings up here to me in the last one as well. No one, let's say the Dale Murphy sold for $99.99. Well, nobody sells it for that because you have fees and how do you know, blah, blah, blah. Well,
yeah.
Look, the truth is no one buys it for that either, because if you bought it for $99, you're paying tax and shipping on top of that, most likely. So
yeah,
the reality is we can only look at hammer price, right? What does it close for? Is it perfect? Again, no, it's not meant to show you, yes, you can go sell your 77 Topps Dale Murphy in a PSA 7 for $100.
Yeah.
Don't take it for that. Just take it for it's gone up like a lot.
Yeah.
And so,
and shipping prices vary. Sellers have different shipping costs. On higher price cards, you may want or need, or they offer insurance. Okay. I know in Pennsylvania, and I think the way, say, eBay does it, it's in the state you live in. I pay 6% tax. I don't know what it is in Texas. It may be different in California or New York.
8.25 here.
8.25. So again, you can't even, we can't even factor, okay, it would be $99, but the buyer would actually have to pay, and then you figure in tax.
108, right.
And I'd be paying less than you.
Right.
Because Pennsylvania tax, I can't believe I'm saying it, Pennsylvania taxes are a little bit less. We're terrible here. But anyway, so we just go by what the data has. Yes. Are there other costs involved in buying or selling? Yes.
Of course.
But there's no way to specifically identify that per card, per seller, per buyer.
And that doesn't mean if you want to buy a Dale Murphy card that you have to pay $99. You could make a deal at a show and pay $80 maybe.
Sure. I mean, if I see someone selling the Dale Murphy rookie with a sticker price of $100, and he said, "Well, that was the last sale," I'd offer 85.
Right.
It's still negotiating, and he may say, "No, the lowest I'll offer is 95, and if I don't want to pay that, I walk away." And again, that you don't have as much flexibility on eBay, because it could be, the seller could list it as, starting bid $100. Well, okay, I'm not going to go after that card or buy it now. But if there's a best offer, I'm sure he's going to get offers.
Right.
Below $100.
Yeah. This is what's funny is you've got some lower dollar cards like the Murphy,
Yep.
and some super high dollar cards like the Jackie,
Yeah, and the Whitey Ford.
And the Whitey Ford that have done well this year, and none of that's surprising.
Yeah. And this is just 1 month to the next. And again,
right.
it could be just down to eye appeal. Okay, the 71 Thurman Munson we know is a very difficult card to find well centered. Did it mean that in this case, a PSA 7 that sold for $849, was that a better centered copy than the 690 that sold in the end? Well, it'd be the end of May versus the end of in June. Quite possibly. But even if that's the case, we're not going to be here and try to do some factoring of eye appeal and say, oh, well, let's discount the 690 or the 849 because one had a better eye appeal. It is what it is.
Right. And yeah, I forgot my point. We'll move on to the next slide. Oh, this is month over month. So this is
the first two are month over month. Then we'll get year to date.
Yeah, this is just in 1 month. What have they changed?
Yeah.
And here's the decreasers. Again, you've got every decade represented, really. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all here.
Like I said, I mean, the 48 Bowman Stain Musial. Who would have thought? And again, you don't know the card, but I mean, went from 1625, and usually when it's right on the dollar, they tend to be buy it now ones. So someone must have liked that card and paid 1625. The 1080.02 can guarantee you that was an auction. So sometimes cards, when they sell at auction, don't sell as much as someone willing to buy a card to buy it now. Or best offer. It could have been the 1625 could have been a best offer.
Right.
But
no way to know, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is someone paid 1625 in around the end of May for 48 Bowman Stain Musial, and someone paid a lot less for one at the end of June.
Right.
That's basically what the numbers say.
Right.
And I would much rather to be the one that paid the 1080, but hey,
yeah, and if you look at
who knows, next month.
Well, the Banks rookies, the same thing,
Yeah.
That's a kind of big boy card, and to see it down month over month is surprising. I would say that's surprising to me. That and the Musial.
Yep. I think the Dave Parker, again, you get a card from the 70s. It could very well next month go back up to $60. One of the things I had been noticing now that we've done this a couple months here with some of these cards, and I have one example here. Once we get to, let's see, what is it? Is this one here? No, I think it's the number 6, number 3. Okay, yeah, it's not. We haven't gotten to it yet. I just jotted down some notes here and stuff. But you could get up and down from 1 month to the next on these 70s cards, and maybe even some of the 60s cards. But yeah, it's a very interesting mix that are in these top 10 lists. So now these are the year to date. So from January, technically December 31st, through the end of June.
So half a year, 6 months.
Yep. We have Monty Irvin, and I think he had the top spot in last month's as well. That may have been due to there may not have been a sale of a PSA 5 Monty Irving in June. But regardless, the last sale price was $750.
Right.
We got Murphy in there. We got Rice. Lou Whitaker, some smaller cards, but again, we got the 5280 Matthews, we got the Satchel Paige. Again, Juan Marshall shows up on the list again. Tom Seaver's rookie card is doing well.
Well, that's not
that's not his rookie card. It's the second year. I was going to say, wait a minute, I'll take his rookie card for $175.
Right.
Harmon Killebrew has been on the top 10 list, I think, for the last couple months. his rookie card. He used to, Killer Butte cards used to be a little bit of a sleeper, and but maybe people are catching on to some of his cards. And again, that's something that we can intuitively look at as we start going from month to month and analyzing, saying, geez, I keep seeing Harmon Killebrew. I keep seeing this card in the top 10. And we may be saying, hey, does that mean that Killebrew cards, people are finally, gaining interest in his cards, where for a long time, he hasn't been. And I don't know if you did the video yet. I think you had mentioned you were going to do something about on your Golden Age of Cardboard, hobby popularity versus statistics and what they did on the field
versus baseball good.
Yeah. And they don't always equate.
Yeah.
And I think Harmon probably fell into that category of not a lot of hobby intention, but maybe that's starting to change. Now we have some interesting ones here. I mean, I was actually surprised to see some of these on this list. And again, it could be because their prices just went so high at the beginning of 2021. And they're still coming down to maybe something like again, a newer normal, but it's a larger drop. But the 68 bench rookie card, the 68 Nolan Ryan, was interesting. Again, the Stan Musial down 36% for the year. Reggie Jackson's rookie card, and then you have a group of the Don Drysdale. It's interesting. I mean, I did to see some of these cards and names on the list.
Yep, and overall the index isn't down that much, so it's fascinating to see these. Why are these cards in particular down significantly more than the rest of them in the index? Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and then
I think that's so some of the takeaways. So a couple of things that I saw here. Last month, the 78 Topps Eddie Murray was the number 3 worst performer. It was down 38%. But in this month, it was the number 6 best at an increase of 40%. So that's one of those ones where you have one, and it's usually in the 70s, where you just get these little fluctuations, but on a percentage basis, it's significant. Dollar wise, maybe not so much. But that was an interesting one. But the 64 Topps Phil Niekro rookie card, it was the 6th worst performing card from the index in June. It was down 30%. In July, it was the 3rd worst, down 37%. So it had gone from $344 down to about $150 in 2 months. That can't necessarily, to me, that tells me, okay, it's not a condition issue. Okay, well, one of them looked maybe nicer than the other. Something's there that probably his rookie card just got way too high. And people were saying, I'm not going to spend $340. Nothing against Phil Niekro, but I mean, to me, I wouldn't spend that much money on a PSA 6 Phil Niekro rookie card. That's just me personally. And I think maybe the numbers show a lot of people are saying, yeah, that's way too high. And it's come down to maybe a little bit more reality.
I have a theory on all of this.
Yeah.
And that is, and you can tell me if you think I'm nuts, by the way, which is likely, but we had this influx in popularity of the hobby, and that happened throughout 2020. Some people kind of went, I'm going to go the more vintage route.
Mm-hmm.
They start buying up the vintage. We see the spike in early 2021 for the first 3 or 4 months. Is it a case, do you think, where once I bought a Phil Niekro rookie, I'm out of the market for a Phil. I don't need another one. Meaning, as people buy all the way up, there's just not as many buyers because they've filled that gap in their collection potentially.
Yeah.
And I don't need 10 Phil Niekro rookies, right? So it's not like I'm constantly looking for them to add them to my collection. And as you
Yeah.
I've seen I think there's been a decrease in the number of people have left the hobby. I think over the last 6 months, I think fewer people are entering the hobby now after the great wave. And so you just have less demand for the card. I mean, who else is out there that needs to buy one? And the people that couldn't buy one before, like you just said, I'm not going to buy one at $300, but now you might enter the, as prices come down, you're going, okay, now
$150. Yeah, okay.
Right.
So that seems more reasonable. I think you're right. And I think it also, in some respect, may show the difference between people who collect vintage cards versus modern cards. Because you said, well, who would want 2 or 3 Phil Necro rookie cards? As opposed to there are some with the modern cards. Oh yeah, I have 10 Ronald Acuna bat down rookie cards.
Right.
Well, that's because I love Ronald Acuna and I just love that card and blah blah blah, and I have a couple 9s and a couple 10s or whatever. I think you see that more with modern collectors than you do with vintage. Because again, I think most of us, if you have a duplicate, it may be because, I have one in my set and I wanted an extra one individually. But unless you're really into a specific player, I think you're right that most vintage collectors are satisfied. It's one and done. Yep, I got my you name it card. Moving on to something else.
And they do I know collectors that upgrade. I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
Typically, I will upgrade if the chance presents itself. But if I accidentally buy a duplicate of a card, I'm selling the lower grade one. But I can think of one card. I have the 60 Yastrzemski. I have 2 of them, but that's only because one's my childhood first vintage card I ever bought. And then I bought a PSA 6, which was a 3, by the way, the childhood card. And so I have 2 of them just because they mean something to me, but it's not because I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this card so much that I want multiples of that card. And I think just collectors think differently. I think the investors think I want, 10 Ronald Acuñas because I think they're going up, right? That's an investor mindset. A collector mindset is I want to, and this isn't, a universal statement, but by and large, we go, I want a nice copy of the card and then I'm good, and then I'll go to the next card that I want to add to my collection. Yeah. And buying multiples to me as a collector is just money that I need, that I would rather use on a card I don't have at all. Yeah. Right. So not to buy one I already have. So,
but at the same time, we are seeing sales. So, I mean, it's right that you pointed out that from last month to this month, there were a decent number of cards, probably at least 10, that there were no sale in that particular grade.
There were actually close to 25. I think it was 25 to 30 of the cards had 0 transactions in the month of June.
Yeah.
In that grade.
Yep.
Not that the card.
There were others that may have had 2 or 3 in a month.
Right. But it shocked me, honestly, how many didn't have any trades.
Yeah. Another one pointed out, I think on the bench clear video, that, and because I know you added, we haven't done any analysis of it yet, but you added the population count of that particular grade for the cards. And he suggested that rather than go by the collector grade, that we use the grade that has the highest population count. And his theory was the higher population, the more numbers of sales that card would have. That may not be actually the case, because to your point, a particular card may have a lot more cards graded in a particular grade, but they could be, that just may mean that more people have them in their private collections and they're not selling them.
Right. I mean,
so I don't think that's an card. If it's more popular, hey, I have one. Hey, you have one. Hey, you have one too. Hey, that's great. And are you selling? No. Well, then you're still not going to get. So population count, and that may differ for modern cards. Okay. But for vintage, I don't know if there's necessarily a correlation of higher pop means higher number of sales.
Right. I don't either. Well, there's lots of good stuff here. Please put down in the comments below what you think of this month's data. We'll be doing this monthly as we go forward and bring you the data, interpret it as you will, is kind of my caveat.
Exactly. Have fun with it, but we do welcome constructive criticisms. And like we said, that one other comment led to the analysis of the decade. So if you have some other thoughts, ideas, or stuff that you would like to see us take a look at within reason in some upcoming episodes that aren't too difficult to do with the data, hey, can you add data all the way back to 1980? Well, no.
Right.
So, but yeah, we welcome everything. So yeah, Mike, as always, thanks for being a part of this. It's really fun. Looking forward to continuing this, and looking forward to seeing you at the National. Really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a blast, no matter what I may pick up, what you may pick up or not pick up. It's just going to be interesting to see everyone. So
it will be indeed.
Yeah. So with that, we'll catch you later.
All right.